So as the Xbox Series X and S continue to settle into the new year, we see more enhanced games trickle into our possession. And for us to check out the difference between what this new hardware can do with a proper next-gen patch, and even what it can do when there is no last-gen version of the game. But this video is all about those next-gen enhancements, where the detail, world and performance just isn't possible on last-gen. But of course, if you can, please leave a comment, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it around, as it greatly pushes the video out to more people, and I appreciate it greatly. Also, if you look in the description down below, there is a link to my new Discord server where everybody is welcome to come and discuss games, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Nintendo, and what's happening in gaming. And with that said, let's get to the list. Starting at number 10, we have a game, but which is still only in preview, and it's Grounded. And that's probably the biggest reason for why it isn't further up the list, but it's definitely one to keep your eye on whilst it approaches launch. Your playable character is around the size of an ant, and you'll be venturing out into the backyard amongst all of the grass, mud, dirt, and most importantly, all of the insects and enemies, which can take you down fairly easily, especially in the early stages. You can venture out solo or team up with 3 other friends to explore together, gather resources and build a base, and you'll be doing it all at a stunning 4K 60 frames a second. And this is another example of, if you're upgrading from the base Xbox One, then you're in for a real treat, as the game looks so much better at that higher resolution. Even at a distance, better reflections and lighting, and it all comes together to create this familiar world, but now you can see it from a different perspective. Check this out, as it's a game for everyone. Next, at number 9, we have The Medium, and if you like your horror games really not that scary, and you don't mind the really slow gameplay at times, then this may be for you. But I found the setting, story, and the use of 2 worlds in The Medium to really be its main strengths, and wish that these existed around a much more tension-filled game. But this is an Xbox Series X and S enhanced game, and it can look quite good at times, but it won't blow you away or anything. Running at 30 frames a second, it does have some nicely detailed indoor and outdoor environments, and some ray tracing is used to enhance the visuals at certain times. The facial animations, along with those of the main character when moving around, aren't the highest quality, and more work with these would have given a better final product. It's worth checking out if you don't mind the slower paced games, and this is only available on the next gen hardware, but it's also included on Game Pass if you have that, so check it out even more. Up at number 8, we have State of Decay 2, and even with the Xbox Series X and S treatment, I've always wanted more from this sequel than what it actually provided. It was one of Microsoft's big releases in the later years of the Xbox One's life cycle, and it did improve on the first game, but was let down by its appearance, bland levels, and basic animations. And even though some of the problems still exist, it's definitely a better looking game now, and runs so much better at 60 frames a second. With a higher resolution which strives to hit 4K, but there's also better shadow and texture details when compared to the last gen version. But the big one is the frame rate. It was relatively stable on the Xbox One X at 30 frames a second, but it just never felt as it should. But now, it's so damn smooth as you make your way around the world, build up your base, collect resources, and fight off the zombies. I'm really hoping the third game is something special, but time will tell. For number 7, we have the somewhat wacky and one-of-a-kind We Happy Few, a game which has some good ideas in it, and a premise and a dystopian world which is pretty unique to say the least, with the citizens of the city basically living out a facade of a life. But it was bogged down by its slow pace and technical details around its release, especially on the base Xbox One. But even on the Xbox One X, it still had some frame rate issues at times, the sign that the CPUs of the last generation just weren't up to the task for so many games. But there are also some bugs which remain, and which are a little disappointing considering We Happy Few was released in early access years ago, but we still see some issues. But even if the visual fidelity and frame rate is better than what it was, this is the game to check out if the visual style appeals to you, and the improved performance was very much needed, although it isn't perfect. I'm keen to see what's next for Compulsion Games as well, now that they are a part of Microsoft. Coming in at number 6, we have the Falconeer, and this is another game, such as Bright Memory, that was made by a single developer. Hugely impressive, and this is another game on the list, just like The Medium, which is only available on the next-gen systems of the Xbox Series X and S. The Falconeer sees you piloting a warbird as you dogfight it out in the air against enemies across several different areas, and all of it running at 4K 60 with a very appealing art style for myself, but this will differ from player to player. The game can also run at 120 frames if your setup allows for it, and it will drop the resolution down to 1800p. But either way, the game looks and performs great. I wouldn't say this is the type of game to throw on to impress others with how powerful the Xbox Series X is, but it goes for a unique look over the more AAA, highly realistic games which often show off new consoles. But there is something here to check out, and it's also on Game Pass as well now, and of course, it's enhanced for the Xbox Series X and S. For number 5, we have For Honor from Ubisoft, the medieval style fighting game where you can take on the role of a samurai, knights or Vikings as you battle through the campaign or multiplayer. And I've always felt like this game always just sat kind of in the background even when it came out. And although it had some teething issues then, it stuck around, and now we have the Xbox Series X patch, and this brings with it the 4K resolution and the 60 frames a second, but also improves the visuals in other areas as well. Players now get a greater level of detail, and it's pushed out further into the distance as well, plus higher quality water reflections and an increase in terms of shadow details as well. I always found For Honor was always a very good looking game, but of course this just makes it that much more so, and when the frame rates are this smooth, especially in a fighting game, then it really makes the whole experience much better to play. Hopefully this one will eventually show up on Game Pass one day, so even more people can check it out. Up at number 4 we have Maneater, and I mentioned it in another video that this is one game where you pretty much get everything that you would expect from next gen gaming. 4K resolution, super silky 60 frames a second, and you get ray tracing as well, and everything comes together in a pretty good package. This may not be a game for everybody or one that you stick with through to the end, but I can see more people picking it up as it drops in price and goes on sale. The game has had an increase in detail across the board, and the lighting comes across as more realistic, whether that be above or below the water. And really, at times, Maneater can just look really damn good. Once again, not to the level of the big blockbuster AAA games, but it is impressive, plus it's satisfying to play a game where you aren't compromising on anything, especially when it comes to performance. Give this one a go when you can for some top-notch fun, and there isn't a whole lot out there like it. And for number 3 we have Black Ops Cold War, and I've mentioned several times in other videos how this crashed the shit out of my console multiple times, but it's still a damn great looking game, and I was enjoying the campaign a lot. Now Call of Duty always looks pretty decent, but now we get the mostly 4K image quality, and the performance is rock solid at 60 frames, and I never really experienced any issues with stutters or dropped frames, or they must have been so minor I couldn't even notice. There is a 120 frames per second mode as well, if you can play that way, but Cold War is also one of the handful of games that implements ray tracing as well. So the reflections, and in this case the shadows, all look fantastic. And that extends to the destruction that you can see when everything starts exploding, shattering and falling apart. The game also has a decent amount of diversity in environments, both indoors and outdoors, to present the visuals in different ways, and it all looks superb, including the lighting. Add in the great character models and good facial detail, and it's a standout at the moment when it comes to graphics. At number 2 we have Hitman, and I'm including the series in this spot. It's even the levels from the older games have been included in Hitman 3, and which also get enhancements, which is fantastic. The likes of the first and second game did suffer from performance issues on even the Xbox One X, but now we have all of the Hitman series together and performing better than ever before on the consoles. This footage you're seeing here is a combination of the Xbox Series X with Hitman 3, whilst the other levels were recorded on the Xbox One X. And that console did a pretty good job when in either high resolution or performance modes, but when moving to the next gen, everything is just so much smoother and at that native 4K as well. I haven't had any dropped frames from what I've played, and this is how you want all of your games to perform. When it's all so much smoother, it's such a better experience where you forget about how the game is running, as there is nothing there such as screen tearing, dropped frames or huge resolution drops to pull you out of the experience. It's awesome. Then at number 1 we have Control once again, and I can't stress enough of how much of an improvement this game is when running compared to the Xbox One X. With the jump from the base Xbox One being absolutely mammoth. The ray tracing mode looks fantastic, even if it is only running at 1440p and 30 frames a second, but the performance mode also runs at the 1440p mode. The ray tracing gets switched off, and we are left with a glorious game and the way it should definitely be played. The stutters of last gen really brought the whole game down, as I was constantly struggling with the performance, which made aiming harder, especially later in the game when there are open areas and lots of enemies, which really put a lot of stress on the hardware. Now the Xbox Series X just chews it up with only very minor hiccups every now and again, It's the way you want to play this game on console the most. There is one level later in the game which of course benefits from the increased horsepower as well, but I point it out because it's one of the greatest levels I've experienced in a game in recent years, and now it's just made even better. So there are more Xbox Series X and S enhanced games to check out, and I still haven't gone through all of them. And with more on the way, gamers are going to be spoiled with games which stand far above what we experienced last gen when it comes to visuals and frame rates and details. But please let me know which has impressed you the most. And if you can, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, share it around, and join up to the Discord with the link down below, as I have a couple of things planned in the future over there. But with that, I'll see you fine people in the next video, and thank you so much for the support. See you later.